And so methane is a trait just like that. There's a genetic component to it, and there's variations that allow us to identify animals that are higher or lower emitters. And those are the ones, when we integrate it into our selection programs, that we want to make parents in the next generations.
Well, we're very excited to have our next guest with us. His name is Troy Rowan, and he is an assistant professor at the University of Tennessee Institute of Agriculture. And first of all, tell me your origin story and how you got into this field.
Yeah, so I guess I came to the field from the field, right? I grew up on a Charolais cattle operation in Iowa. My family has been in that part of the world for, 100 plus years, farming and ranching, and I thought for a hot minute that I wanted to be a human doctor, but thankfully organic chemistry drug me back down to earth, and I got bit by the research bug, but really wanted to find my way back into animal agriculture and livestock. Did my PhD at the University of Missouri, focused on beef cattle genetics, and took this job at Tennessee in 2021, and I've been there since.
Wow. So what is it about beef cattle genetics that really kind of gets your motor running? What is that? What is it?
Yeah, I think it's really fun to see long sustained progress, right? And I'm a numbers guy a little bit, so even as a little kid, I remember my dad was actually a beef semen salesperson, and so we'd drive all around, going around breeding cows and whatnot, and they had this books full of the bulls with all of their breeding value numbers and estimates of how good they are genetically. And I remember as a kid, like literally memorizing them like the backs of baseball cards. And so it was really nerdy stuff from early on, and it's just bled through the rest of my career.
But I love that because you have that background, and so that's so important to what you're doing now. So talk about how beef genetics in relation to how it could mitigate methane, what we're talking about at this summit. How do the two kind of work together?
Yeah, as animal geneticists, we really think that if we can measure a trait on enough animals and it has a genetic component, we can move the needle on it over time. And so we've been doing this for thousands of years as cattle breeders, right? We had these really wild cows that we domesticated by selecting for increased sort of tameness and docility. And recently we've tried to improve them on how much milk they produce, how much weight they gain, how big their carcasses are. And so it's that long sustained progress in trying to find those animals that have the genetic potential to emit less. We select those over time, we can make genetic progress.
And you probably get asked this all the time, but how far away are we from doing something like that?
Yeah, the challenge, of course, is that measuring methane on enough animals is kind of a tall challenge. We have to have tens of thousands of records on animals to deliver these sort of selection tools to producers. So we're still very much in the time point where we're trying to get a handle on how do we measure this on animals out in pasture settings in particular, which is really tough. But again, I think that a lot of resources have been thrown into this. There's a concerted effort to work towards that. So we're maybe still a few years away from having those tools in producers' hands, but it's something that I know lots of different corners of our industries are working on.
And speaking of that, what have you heard from producers about this? Are they kind of like, I don't know, or yeah, let's do this. This makes sense.
Yeah, I think there's a pretty wide variety of producer takes on this, and the thing that I always come back to is that for a producer to add something new to their selection objective, there's got to be a really clear economic signal for it. And I think that's still what is evolving. Producers will pick up a tool if there's a clear way for them to get paid for it. And so I think as markets evolve around the methane mitigation, producers will be more inclined to add that into their selection objectives. But I think that there's a lot of things that go hand in hand with it. These animals that emit less methane tend to be the cows that are more efficient utilizers of the forage resources that producers have. So it's one of those things that I think that we might be able to make some headway on it before we even start getting directly compensated for methane improvements in our breeding programs.
And you almost brought me to my next question about how does environment affect the genetic traits and what you're looking for?
Yeah, that's a really big challenge for us, especially when we think about beef cattle, where they're in such a big variety of environments, right? All the way from in Tennessee, where we've got lots of grass growth, we get tons of rain, all the way out to here, where it's a lot more dry, more extensive native rangelands. So the cow's ability to digest the unique types of forage and unique seasonalities, we were just talking about the weather before we started recording, that adds a whole nother level of complexity to modeling methane and trying to predict animals and how they fit into a particular environment.
And is there any of your research you want to talk about too, in regard like new research you have coming out or new research that you're working on?
Yeah, our group is really interested in a lot of different angles of this. So not just in measuring methane emission on lots of animals, but how can we use these devices that we measure methane with to also give us an idea of a cow's efficiency on forage, which is really a trait that we've not been able to get a handle on in the past. So we're doing a lot of work on that front. And also I'm really interested in how the cow's genetics and the rumen microbiome, so all the bacteria, archaea, all the stuff that colonizes the rumen and helps that cow break down plant matter, how do those things work together? So we're doing some work trying to understand how a cow's genetics might shift the composition of that rumen microbiome, and then what are the effects of that on the animal's efficiency in methane emissions. So those are the things that we're really interested in. Lots of work to go, but job security for a young professor.
I was going to ask that. Is that exciting, or is it like, oh, there's so much to do, there's so much to learn?
No, it's what gets me out of bed every morning is having a new problem to get after, and our tools evolve so fast. And I think our community in livestock is so collaborative too that it's not sort of Troy against the world, but there's a big group of people spread all over the world that are really interested in working together to attack these problems. So that's what keeps me going and getting me out of bed every morning.
And a summit like this, I would think, is empowering too, because you have all these people coming together talking about this and feeding off each other. And talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I was just telling somebody last night that the great thing about a summit like this is that I don't know 80% of the people, and I don't know 70% of the scientific content, which usually we go to a conference and it's us and our people talking about our stuff. And so it's really encouraging to see social scientists here, to see finance people, to see geneticists, all of these people sort of attacking one big problem from a lot of different angles. It's so encouraging, gives me a lot of energy, and I've had tons of conversations with people that I never ever would have run across. And summits like this are really great to make those things happen.
And along those lines, how do you get the message out to the masses? You know, we're talking to producers, we're talking to researchers, but how do we get it out to the masses? You know, that we just got out of a panel discussion about communication, science communication. How do you do it personally?
Yeah, I think that it really depends on our audience. That was something that the science communication panel did a great job of underlining, that our audiences differ even within what we would just say the general public is not a general public. There's a huge variety of folks within there, and we've got to tailor a message that fits each one of those. But again, I think that it's really important that folks understand that this is science, right? There's lots of really good high-level work that's going into attacking this problem. It's not just a bunch of people talking about it. It's not just a bunch of companies, but really from the producers all the way up the supply chain, working together to attack this. And it's a concerted effort. We want to be doing this hand in hand with consumers. We really want to be doing this hand in hand with producers, right? We can talk about everything that we want to at this summit, but if the solutions don't make sense for producers, it's all for naught. So again, having producers at the table and all the way along the line is so important.
And what do you think the next steps are in understanding genetics in cattle and phenotyping and how that can affect methane mitigation moving forward?
Yeah, I think again we're still in an evolving state, right? New technology is coming on board. Traditionally, the things that we would use to collect those phenotypes for genetic evaluations really, really expensive, hard to manage, makes sense in a research setting, but I would never ask a producer to roll it out into their operation. So I think as new technologies are starting to come online, that price tag is shrinking. The usability of the technology, the interpretability of the data, not just for methane emission, but also giving decision support to producers on other things. All those pieces are starting to come together, and that's really exciting as we start to take these things out of our university research herds and out towards a larger producer audience.
Last question I have: how much do you love your job?
Oh my
How much
gosh.
do you love your job? I
I've
can
got
just tell.
I've got the best job. Yeah, I get to wake up and think about cows all day and get paid for it, and go all over the world and talk about cows. And it's the absolute best job ever. I absolutely love it. And I guess I get to keep doing it for the next 30 years or something. So
That's awesome. Awesome. Well, I can't thank you enough for joining us today. Super interesting, and you can just tell you do love your job, which is passionate, and I just love talking to you, and I could talk to you for hours, but we do have to end this podcast. For more information, you can go to our website and keep up to date on all the podcasts we have coming up on the Career Conversations.